Okay. So we're going to take a look at the Mishnah on Daf Yud Zayin. Yeah. And I have, if you want to print that, I have one printout of the pages for today, which we'll get to soon. But first, I want to go through the Mishnah with you.
Yeah.
And the Mishnah says the following, that we have a three-way machlokas, exactly what has to be written in Megillah Sotah. And that's just the daf that we did, I think, 3 days ago, very, very recently. And we start with the Shita of Rabbi Meir, then we go on to the Shita of Rabbi Yossi, and finally the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So first we start with the Shita of Rabbi Meir. And the Parsha of Sotah in the Torah, in Parshas Naso, consists of the following. We have Pasuk Yud Tes, and then we have Yud. You have Chaf, Chaf Aleph, and Chaf Beis. So we basically have 4 psukim. Now, the first of those 4 psukim is really just a mandate to the Kohen to write the Megillah Sotah. And it says, V'kosav es ha'olos ha'eleh, HaKohen B'Sefer.
The first one?
Right. So that's going to be omitted. Okay, then? And it says the following. It says, Im lo shachav ish, v'im lo satis, tumatachas ishech, etc. And then it says, V'at ki satis tachas ishech, and that has to be written in the Megillah Sotah. The Eno Kosev, but the opening line in the Parsha of Sotah, which says that the Kohen is in charge of what's going on over here, and then there's another pasuk that says that he has to be mashbiah the isha, and then there's going to be another pasuk that she has to accept the shvua. All that l'chora could be omitted because that's not an essential part of the klolos, and the Torah commands the Kohen to write the klolos, the olos, on a sefer, and then put that sefer into the water and obliterate the Shem Hashem. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, we don't cut out any part of the parsha, but rather even the tzavah, even the part that commands the Kohen, that what? That is Bia Kohen es ha'isha b'shvuas ha'olah, even that should be included, thank you, in the Ksivas HaMegillah. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol atzmo eno kosev, that everything except for the explicit olos should be omitted from the Ksivas HaSefer. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, all that we have in the Sefer is Yitein Hashem osach li olo l'shvua ubo hamayim amorma elu b'meyayich, and certainly not her Kabbalas Hashvua, the Omra Isha Omi Omi. That's not written in the Sefer. So we're going to now summarize 3 shitas in Tanoim as to what is written in a Megillah Sotah. B'maiko miflagi. So through the drashos, Ribuyim and Miyutim, we'll get a clear picture of the 3 shitas. B'hai kraka miflagi. The Torah commands the Kohen, v'kosav es ha'olos ha'ela Kohen B'Sefer. So Rabbi Meir, who's the Tanakam of our Mishnah, Sovar olos mamish, that for sure he has to write the olos. So that's upgeret, so to speak. That's something that all the Tanoim will agree. Yitein Hashem osach li olah, etc. Bo mayim ha'ma'or ma'il b'meinayich, etc. All that has to be written, and that's derived from olos.
Is this Dafka? Yud Zayin.
Yud Zayin. Right, Yud Zayin. The Mishnah and then the Gemara. But yet the Torah says, V'kosav es ha'olos. So there's an extra hey. And that extra hey, according to Rabbi Meir, is a ribui. So let's make a note of that. That's going to come up over and over again. That Rabbi Meir sees in the hey a ribui. Because elsewhere, the Gemara is going to point out, Rabbi Meir uses a hey as a mute, but here he uses a hey as a ribui. L'rabos klos habos machmas habrachos. Notice the Torah says that if lo shachav ha'ishos, if you're innocent, then you will be bestowed with brachos. And Michal lava tashmeahein, for the fact that the Torah says that if you're innocent, you will be zoche to brachos. That's an implicit klola that if you're guilty, then you will suffer all these klolos. So the hey adds to the ksivas sofer, to the ksivas hasefer hamegillah, im lo shachav ish osa. Okay, now we move on to the next word. It says in the pasuk, v'kosav es ha'olos ha'ela. Ha'ela seems to be a mute. And what is it coming to exclude? What does not have to be written in Megillah Sotah? Lima'ute klolos shebemishna Torah. We would have thought that since the Torah says olos means klolos, then we find in Mishnah Torah, at the end of the Chumash, in Dvarim Perek Chav Ches, we also find a list of klolos. So if the Torah would have said v'kosav hakohen es ha'olos b'sefer, and it wouldn't have said ha'ela, then ha'olos would refer to all the olos that are written in the Torah, including the olos that are recorded in Chumash Dvarim, when it says Yakeko Hashem b'shachafas, etc., etc.
What happened with Kosai?
I don't know. Right now, I don't have an answer to your question. Hold on to your question. Maybe okay, now it says ha'ela. So in addition to the miut of Ela, which is going to exclude the clause in Mishnah Torah, we also have ha'ela, the extra hey. And that extra hey of ha'ela is l'mu'ute tzavos v'kabolos amen. So there are tzavos in which the Torah says that the Kohen has to write the Sefer. There's another tzavah where the Torah says Hishbiya Kohen, the Kohen has to impose a shvua. And then there's a pasuk that indicates that she has to be makabel the shvua. That's called the amen, amen. None of that is going to be written and included in the Megillah Sotah. That's the sheet of Rabbi Meir. So basically, Megillah Sotah, according to Rabbi Meir, has two elements to it, and they're all part and parcel of the same entity, and that's called klolos. Number one, the explicit klolos, Yitein Hashem osach li'ola, etc., and the implicit klolos of klos habos machmas habrachos, when the Torah says im losatis, that's an implicit bracha. I'm sorry, an implicit klola, and that's derived from the ribui of ha'olos. So we have olos and ha'olos, according to Rabbi Meir. Olos are the explicit klolos, and ha'olos are the klos by implication. Then we have ha'ela, which is a double mute. Ela is a mute for klolos sheba Mishnah Torah, and ha'ela is a mute for tzavos and kabolos. Then we get to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Kulu kida amrit, we should write in the Megillah Sotah the entire parsha of Sotah without excluding anything. So first we start with the word olos, and that's olos mamish, right? Rabbi Yossi is identical to Rabbi Meir at this point. Then it says ha'olos, and Rabbi Yossi is going to say that ha'olos is going to include, as we saw in the ribui of Rabbi Meir, chlolos by implication, habos machmas brach. So far, as far as the word ha'olos is concerned, there's an exact identity between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir. Where do they disagree? They disagree when we get to ha'ela. And here's where Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir sees in ha'ela a double mute, correct? Ela is a mute for klolos of Mishnah Torah, and ha'ela, the extra hey, is a mute for tzavos and kabolos. Comes along Rabbi Yossi and he darshans s, right? The pasuk says v'kosav es ha'olos ha'ela, and the word s is coming as a ribui, which apparently indicates that Rabbi Meir does not darshan esin. And maybe that's a universal halacha according to Rabbi Meir, that we don't derive and we don't define an S as a ribui. But according to Rabbi Yossi, S is a ribui, and it's coming to be marbet savos and kabbalos. So wherein lies the shetach, the area of the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi? In the word ha'ela. According to Rabbi Meir, ha'ela has a double miut, and it's going to exclude klolos and savos and kabbalos. However, when it says because of es ha'olos, and Rabbi Meir will expand olos to include brachos habo machmas klolos habos machmas habrachos, Rabbi Yossi is on board with that. But when it comes to ha'ele, which according to Rabbi Meir excludes tzavos and kabbalos amen, that's where Rabbi Yossi has the word es as a ribui because of es ha'olos in order to be marbe tzavos and kabbalos amen. So the machlokas now between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir is a kind of a narrow machlokas as to whether or not we expand Megillas Sotah to include even tzavos and kabbalos. Rabbi Meir would say no. Why? Because the hay of ha'ela comes to exclude tzavos and kabbalos, whereas Rabbi Yossi has a reboot from the word what? Es, to include tzavos and kabbalos. Now we get to the third shita, and that's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that kulo b'mi'ute darish lahu. What does that mean? That Rabbi Yehuda does not interpret the hay of ha'olos the way Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi did. Both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi agreed that the hay of ha'olos is a ribui, and therefore it comes to be marbe chlolos habos machmas habrachos. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, says that no, ha'olos, the extra hay, is a mute, and it comes to exclude chlolos habos machmas habrachos. And then he holds like Rabbi Meir that Eila and ha'ela is a double mute, excluding chlolos from Mishnah Torah and excluding tzavos and kabbalos. And basically, all Rabbi Yehuda has in his Megillah Sotah is olos mamish. What does it mean, olos mamish? It means the explicit chlolos. So again, just to summarize, and if you take a look in your phones for a minute, in the Otzer Ha'iyunim Marochav Vav, you'll see a summary of these three shitas that takes up almost the entire page, Mem Beis. And that is that we have the following three shitas. Let's go from, I'm going to do it the opposite way. We'll start with Rabbi Yehuda, and then we'll go to Rabbi Meir, and finally to Rabbi Yossi. Right, so what are we going to have here? We're going to have Rabbi Yehuda who says, olos mamish, that only the explicit klolos, that yitein Hashem, etc., that and only that will be written in the Megillah Sotah. Then we have Rabbi Meir, who has the hay of ha'olos as a ribui to include klolos habos machmas habracha. And then we have Rabbi Yossi, who has es as a ribui for tzavos and kabbalos. Do we have it? Again, even though I didn't add anything here to the Gemara, but I think sometimes when you're learning Daf Yomi, it's very important to summarize this. So we have a totem pole, so to speak. We have a sheet of Rabbi Yehuda who's very, very meager, very stingy about what should be written in the Megillah Sotah, only olos mamish. Rabbi Meir is going to be a little bit more expansive to include from the hay of ha'olos as a ribui, even close habos machmas habrachos. And then we have Rabbi Yossi, who is going to expand it even further based on the word es to include even tzavos and kabbalos. Now, ultimately, my goal for today is to try to understand this three-way machlokes in lumdus, in conceptual terms, because right now, at this point, we're still very much anchored in the technicalities of what I call like hilchos drashos. When do you have a miut? When do you have a ribui? The hay of ha'olos, is it a ribui the way Rabbi Meir understood it to include klolos habos machmas habracha? Is it a miut like Rabbi Yehuda understood it to exclude klolos habos machmas habrachos? And then you have another issue in hilchos drush, whether or not S is a ribui, and that's where Rabbi Yossi comes forward and he says we have to include in the Megillah Sotah even tzavos and kabbalos based on the ribui of S, and both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda reject the ribui of S. The Keren Ora, which is basically the first kind of addition to the sugya, you'll see on the left column on Membeis in the fourth paragraph down. And he says that if we analyze what would have been our premise if not for a ribui, we're going to end up with a stira on that point. Again, whenever you have a drasha like a ribui, you want to know, well, what was the assumed premise before the ribui? Is that correct? So far, so good. So he wants to know what's the status of klolos habos machmas habrachos. I'm going to call it intuitive, if you follow what I mean. What would have been our intuition without any psukim, without any drashos, when the Torah says v'kosav es ha'olos, would olos include even implicit klolos, namely klolos habos machmas habrach? And here he finds a stira. Why? Because if you take a look at Rabbi Meir has the extra hay of ha'olos to include klolos habos machmas habracha. Intuitively, we would have assumed that that's not considered olos. Is that correct? So far, so good. But now he says, let's fast forward to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that he needs the letter hey as a miut, right? There was a machlokas between, let's go over it one more time, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about the hey of ha'olos, whereas Rabbi Meir understood that hey of ha'olos is a ribui. Rabbi Yehuda excluded klolos habos machmas habrachos by virtue of a miut of hay. So again,
with he would have included intuitive
and
would have
beautiful.
Included.
So again, if we leave out all the technicalities about whether a hay is a ribui or hay is a miut, whereas Rabbi Meir sees hay as a ribui to be marba klolos habos machmas habrachos, and Rabbi Yehuda on the other hand sees hay as what? As a miut. But what was the intuitive assumption? And as Tzvi points out so well, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the intuitive assumption seems to be that klolos habos machmas habracha would be included under olos, would have the status of klolos. He needs a special hay of ha'olos as a miut to exclude that conclusion, that premise. Imkain kasha at the end of this paragraph. Mimanavsham im asvara chitzona, what we called intuitive, is lamaton. We would not include them, and that explains Rabbi Meir. That Rabbi Meir needs a hay as a ribui to include klolos habos machmas habracha. Is then I don't understand Rabbi Yehuda. Shouldn't Rabbi Yehuda have embraced the same basic fundamental premise that klolos does not include habos machmas habrachos, because the Torah is specifying bracha, not klola, and therefore we need a ribui in order to include klolos habos machmas habracha. Why does Rabbi Yehuda feel that he needs a miut from the hay of ha'olos to exclude brachos, to exclude klolos habos? We'll call it implicit klolos.
What you're doing, or what he's doing here, is he is concluding what the intuitive approach would be based on each of their limudim.
Right.
But that's not necessarily an intuitive approach. That's a maskana that he's deriving from what each one of them, the limud that each one has.
But again, I think he's making a brilliant point over here. If you need a ribui or a miut, that's going to tell you what would you have assumed without the ribui, without the extra hay, or if hay is a miut, what would you have assumed without the extra hay? It all comes down to the following question: what conclusion would you have derived if there was no extra hay in the word ha'olos?
Except for one thing. it would seem that each one of them approaches it differently.
Oh,
It's not necessarily
but why?
a stira.
But why? That's what he really wants to get. In other words, where was Reb Meir coming from when he assumed that until I know otherwise, Klos Habos Machmas Habracha wouldn't be exactly. And why does Rabbi Yehuda L'shitaso assume that if not for the miyud of hay,
they would be.
It would be included under Klos? And the answer is, says Karen Orr, again, this is not what you'd call brisket Torah, but it's Torah Emes anyway, because he says that there's an ancient machlokes between Rabbi Meir and all the Chachamim. So you have all the Chacham on one side of the equation, including Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Meir on the other side, about a principle called mitoch lavat hashomei. Now watch what goes on. Everybody holds mitoch lavat hashomei. If we apply that principle to Klos Habos Machmas Habrachos, then what intuitive conclusion would we have derived? Is it included under Klos or not?
It depends on whether you hold mitoch.
No, again, I'll start again. Maybe I didn't say it right. I'm saying if I hold, like all the Chachmei Yisrael, except for Rabbi Meir, that mitoch lavat hashomei, then what would have been your definition of Klos Habos Machmas Habracha? It would include them, because mitoch lavat hashomei. If the Torah says that if you're not guilty, you won't suffer the following punishments, then it means that if you are guilty, you will. And that's going to be Rabbi Yehuda, Lishitaso. But again, it's not Lishitaso, it's Lishitas Kol HaTanoim.
Everybody except Rabbi Meir.
But Rabbi Meir holds that Lo Amrina Mitoch Lavat Hashomei Hein. And therefore, we don't know that brachos that are implicit, I mean the klos that are implicit in the brachos, would be included under klos. Now I need an extra hay to be marbe klos habos machmas habracha. Again, I think this is like mamish brilliant. And the star of our show today is the Karen Orah. We're gonna have a lot of brisket Torah today too, Emir Hashem. Don't worry about it. We're gonna have a shtickle Torah here from my Rebbe's Rebbe, Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, who was my father's Rebbe and my parents' Masada Kedusha. So, but hold on a minute.
The Karen Orah is also Torah's image.
Absolutely. This is Torah's emes, except for one problem. And the problem is, what do we do with Rabbi Yosef? That's going to be a problem, because this Karen Orah fits like a glove to explain Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. But wait a minute. What about Rabbi Yossi? What was Rabbi Yossi's shita? Let's go over it. Rabbi Yossi says that, right? Rabbi Yossi says that we include Klolos Habos Machmas Habrach. In that sense, he is on the same turf as Rabbi Meir. But Rabbi Yossi, like all Chachmei Yisrael, hold that mitoch lavat hashomei hein. That's what he says over here. Harei b'Gemara. Just give me one more minute. Yeah. Oh, okay. You're ahead of me. Sorry. He says Harei b'Gemara mevush Rabbi Yossi, who says lo mafsik, and you have to write the entire parsha like Rabbi Meir, except that he doesn't have the miyud of tzavos and kabbalos. Din zeh nilmad l'daito ki Rabbi Meir miha'olos, meaning Rabbi Yossi. I'm sorry. Yeah, Rabbi Yossi is on the same page as Rabbi Meir, and he likewise uses hey of ha'olos as what? As a ribui. How is that solo? Matzina b'shum makom sheyeshno tana hasover ki Rabbi Meir. In other words, if the thesis of the Karen Orah is correct, that I need a ribui of hay to include because I hold mitoch lav iyat hashomei hein, and yet Rabbi Yossi needs a ribui to include klolos habos machmas habracha from the hay. Rabbi Yossi holds mitoch lav at hashomei hein. So how could it be that the intuitive assumption before the ribui of hay was that klolos habos machmas habracha would not be included in ksivas ha'olos? And he doesn't answer this question. So when you ask me, is the Karen Orah Torah's emes or not, I have to add the following histaigut, that yes, the Karen Or is brilliant, and I have no doubt that it's Torah's emes. The only problem is I don't know what to do with Rabbi Yossi.
The question is, when you say that the Torah that the Karen Or is Torah's emes, do we say miklal lava tashomea hen?
Okay, let's move on because Rabbosa, I have a velt to study with you today. I don't know how in the world I'm going to get to see.
I'm confused with psukim. We're focusing here so much that we have a bracha and learning the klal that's not, but the klal is written in the second half of the sentence.
Right,
Because
we're going to
if you
split
didn't do
the
it-
sentence
if you didn't do
into
it-
parts.
But we're not. You don't need to learn anything implicitly. It's explicit in the pasuk. Ve'at ki satit tachat yishech v'chin nitmeh.
Right, so that according to everyone is a klola, is an ola, and that's going to be written in Megillah Sotah. Less man the Pope. No Tana would question. But then, if you read the next pasuk, what does it say? The imlosatis.
No, the pasuk before.
Well, the before.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't have the
yeah,
publish in front of
yeah.
me. That's going to be the machlokas. The pasuk before that
There's no inyani difference. The question is whether the text is supposed to be included or not.
in Megillah Sotah. But
Whether it would be
if you
considered a
omitted,
klola,
if you
don't
omitted
miklal
the
lava
part of the
tashomea hen.
pasuk, then the Megillah
Yeah,
Sotah is not found.
Lav atashel mehen is when the hen is not written. It's not explicit.
Correct.
But here it is explicit.
No, the explicit part is written in any case as part
No,
of the
the
Megillah.
Michalava Tashomea Hain is going to apply to the case where it's not explicit. In the case where it's explicit, I don't need Michalava Tashomea Hain. But if you're asking, what about the pasuk of him Losatis? You want to read that pasuk to me? What number is that?
Three parts. This is back.
But
to
where's the
first pasuk.
Lotatis?
Right. That's the first thing we start with.
Right.
Melosati.
Oh, Vim Losatis. Now the question is, if Losatis, then you'll be Naki and whatever it says over there. I have to read through the psukim.
Right.
But the question is, should that be written in Megillah Sotah in the sense that it's implying a klal, meaning only in Losatis, then you'll be Naki. But if not, you'll suffer the punishment.
Okay.
All right.
I'll leave it.
Leave it for now. We can talk about it later. Okay, now we get to the Brisker Rav, which is on page Mem Gimel. Yeah? Everybody have that? B'chidushe agriz. Now, what we're about to learn here in Beis, and that'll take us all the way to Gimel, is that the Brisker Rav has a chakira about Ksivas Megillah Sotah. He has two possibilities, A and B, and he's going to prove B, let's say. Again, it doesn't matter which is A and which is B. And this entire piece is going to be an objection to the Brisker Rav, that conclusion that he wants to prove based on the Rambam could not be tenable. And a lot of it has to do with a methodological approach or issue as to how to read a Rambam. The assumption here in rejecting the Brisker Rav, which is the Makav Patish here, is going to be that if a Rambam tells you X, it's because you could have thought Y. Do you follow? You know, it's in the same way that we learn a shtickle Gemara and we see that the Mishnah or the Gemara says X, we ask, well, Pshita Maika Mashmalhan, there must have been another possibility, otherwise we wouldn't have needed the Mishnah or the Gemara. That same methodology applies to learning a Rambam. Let's see it inside. What is the issue of the Brisker Rav? The Brisker Rav has two ways of understanding Ksivas Megillah Sotah. According to one approach, the Torah is telling you to write the psukim. And that's what it's all about. Okay? Lichtov es parshas hasotah. Just simply copy over the parsha. You know, you have a Sefer Torah here, you have a parchment, copy over the psukim from the Sefer Torah. That's possibility number one.
Go back to the Be'er Shem Shalim more and drink the whole parsha.
I don't know. We'll get into the details.
Like we do in Tefillah and the Mezuzah, we write the whole parsha.
Yeah, well, okay, I don't know if he means the whole parsha, but he definitely means that we are copying from the Torah itself. Second possibility.
What do you mean copying from the same?
So, Rabbosa, give me
You can't
5
copy from the
minutes.
parsha.
Yaakov,
copy
give me
from the
5 minutes. I'll tell you why. Because we're learning this together. I want, after we see the Chakira and the Nafkamina, then we'll be able to answer your question. Do you follow me? We're still
Okay.
premature.
Yeah.
Oh, on the third line, no. This is not copying from the Torah. We're not taking from the Torah and being matik it in the Megillah Sotah. But what we're doing is we want two things to happen, and they have to reflect a perfect mirror image one of the other. What are the two things? One thing is that the Kohen has to be mashbia the Sotah. How is he mashbia the Sotah? And it's not enough that she hears the shvua and even accepts the shvua, but she has to drink the shvua, so to speak. And what does that mean? The shvua itself, which warns her that if she's guilty, this is what's going to happen to her, that has to be written in a Megillah, dipped into the water, made a concoction, and then she has to drink that concoction. So far, so good. Again, I know at this point it doesn't make any sense, but when we flesh it out with enough Kavini, you'll see what the Brisker Rav is trying to get at.
Brisker Rav means the Belgian?
Rav Velvel. And Rav Velvel says, let's take a look at Rabbi Yossi, for example. Rabbi Yossi says that we're going to include in Megillah Sotah the Tzavos and the Kabbalos. That doesn't make any sense. How could you include the Tzavos? The Tzavos are mandates to the Kohen to write a Megillah Sotah, mandates to the Kohen to be mashbia the Sotah. Why is that written in Megillah Sotah? Bevadai zed din beparsha. It must be that the second definition, right, which was that Megillah Sotah is just a nusach of the Shvuah, that can't be so according to Rabbi Yossi. It's impossible. It's an absolutely unintentable, how do you say it? Untenable position. Why? Because how could you include the tzavos when the Torah commands the Kohen to do this and to do that, include that in the Megillah? They can't say that the nusach of the Megillah is the nusach of the Shvuah. It must be, therefore, says Brisker Rav, that according to Rabbi Yossi, undoubtedly, there's some sort of halacha of writing the parsha. If you're like copying from the Torah, the parsha of Sotah, even those parts of the parsha that are not part of what? Of the Shvuah. Okay, that's according to Rabbi Yossi. But that proof would not make any impact, for example, on Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir holds that the tzavos are not included in Megillah Sotah. So now we're left with the following chakir according to Rabbi Meir, and I would say almost without a doubt, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda is the opposite extreme, polar extreme of Rabbi. I meant to say Rabbi Yehuda. Did I say Rabbi Yehuda? Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda is the exact opposite polar extreme of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi expands the Megillah, and Rabbi Yehuda gives you the bare bones of the Megillah. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it makes sense to say that this is what the Kohen is mashbia the Sotah. He's warning her with the Shvuah that if she's guilty, this is what's going to happen to her. And that's what he writes in the Megillah Sotah. There's not going to be any mention of anything beyond that. But let's take Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir allows for some level of expansion, correct? And he's the middle shita here between the two polar extremes of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Meir has klolos that are not explicit in the Torah. They're mitoch lava tashmei hein, based on the ribui of ha'olos, the hay of ha'olos. Now, yesh lachkar. Where is this Megillah Sotah coming from? Is it coming from the Parsha? Is it coming from the Torah? Or is it just the Shvuah? And what's the purpose of the Shvuah? To warn her. And that warning is implicit even in the Chol Abba Machmas Habra. Comes along the Brisker Rav, and he says, let's read the Rambam. Careful. Perek Gimel Halacha Ches Milchus Sotah. The Rambam addresses the following question. Rabbosai, can I have your attention for a minute? Yeah? I need all eyes on deck. Mm-hmm. The Shem Hashem in the Sefer Torah is written one way and pronounced a different way. That's called the Shem HaMeforish. So in the Sefer Torah, it's written Yud K Vav K, but it's not recited like that. We read it as Adnus, correct? What do we do, asks the Rambam, in the case of Megillah Sotah? The name of Hashem appears in the parsha of Sotah. Should we write Yud Kei Vav Kei, or should we write Aleph Dalid Nun Yud? What would be the Havamina to write Aleph Dalid Nun Yud? Because when the Kohen is mashpia the Sotah, he's not going to say Yud Kei Vav Kei. He's going to say in that shvua Adnus. Says the Rambam, the Kosev es Hashem Kiksava, that he is required to write Yud Kei Vav Kei as it's written in the Sefer Torah. Frekta Brisker Rav Pshita my Kamashmalon. What was the Havamina that you would write the name of Hashem differently in the Megillah Sotah than in the Sefer Torah? And the answer must be that the Rambam understood that Megillah Sotah is a nusach of Shvuah. And if the Megillah Sotah represents a formula of Shvuah, then there's a Havamin at least that formula of a Shvuah should be the way that the Kohen is mashbiah. And the way the Kohen is mashbiah is not kiksavo, but kikriyaso. And if the kriya is adus, maybe therefore the Megillah Sotah as a reflection of the Shvuah should also be kikriyaso and not kiksavo. But if you're going to tell me that the Megillah Sotah means to write a parsha in the Torah, to copy over the words of the Torah, and here, Yaakov, I'm getting back to your question from before, then how should we write the name of Hashem in the Megillah Sotah? It's a Davar Pasha. Pshita. No one could even be poseh peh u'mitzafseh. That certainly it has to be written like it's written in the Torah, namely Yud Kei Vav Kei. I didn't need the Rambam to discover America and tell me that the Megillah Sotah has to be written Yud Kei Vav Kei. Apparently the Rambam wanted me to chadesh that since Megillah Sotah is the nusach of the Shvuah and the kriya of the Shvuah is Adnus, therefore maybe you would write Hashem's name in the Megillah Sotah reflecting the Shvuah as Adnus.
Maybe the Maskana rejects that though.
Okay, so the Maskana is based on a special halacha that we derive from wherever we derive it. Okay, so Ad Kana Kofa Aleph, meaning in this paragraph called Beis, we have the Brisker Rav. Now we're going to slug up the Brisker Rav. And he says the following. Ilu Adin, this is the last line in the right column. Lichtov is Masha Mashbia is bevadai ain't tzarich lichtov es haklolish of Mishnah Torah. How did the Gemara entertain the Havamina that the clothes that are written in Mishnah Torah should be included in the Megillah Sotah? If you're talking about copying over klolos, right? Klolos as they're written in the Torah. Well, we have klolos in Parshas Naso, and we have klolos in Parshas. Where is it? Vizos HaBracha, wherever it is there, right? Oh, then I understand that I need a special miyad ha'ela to exclude klolos of Mishnah Torah. But if you're telling me that the whole purpose of the nusach of Megillah Sotah is to write down the shvuah, there's no shvuah in Sefer Dvarim, in the parsha of the klolos there. What was the havamina for which we need a special yalfus, a special limud and a miyud to exclude klolos of the Mishnah Torah? The od.
Or the other way. If it's a parsha in the Torah, the parsha that's the Mishnah Torah is not.
Right. The whole havamina is very difficult, but certainly you have to agree that if it's writing the shvuah, then there's no havamina. If there is any like far out havamina, a mixas havamina, something to grab onto, it's got to be because we're writing clothes from the Torah.
We have Gilgal.
Which part of it?
We have Gilgal Klolos. She observes a klala when you were all Klolos.
Gilgal Klolos. Okay, I don't know. That's a new concept for me.
Real
Gilgal
No,
Klolos.
we have a drush against it. Saying that
Right.
they haven't.
Va'od tzarich bir b'dvara, harambam pasak v'achar kach mashbi'a kohen b'loshen shehi makeres. Hey guys, what language is the shvuah going to be in? Oh, she's an Israeli, right? She knows Hebrew very well. Give it to her in the original. No. She's French. She's Italian. She's American. You can't give it to her in the original. Now, we know for sure that it's absolutely impossible to translate the words of the Torah. Do you follow what I mean? There are certain words in the Torah that simply defy translation. So he says the following, the Rambam passes.
All translations inaccurate.
Correct. But certainly when it comes to Lashon Kodesh, I mean, that's the famous Rabbi Akiva Eiger about, the Gemara concludes that Kriyas Ma'anemer b'chol lashon. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger has a whole discussion, and you'll look in some of the, I don't know if it's the art school Siddur. Yeah, they write A-D, right? I think so. I think if I remember correctly, I mean, I think it's Siman and Hey. I don't remember Simanim, but no, that's what I'm telling you. That you read Kriyas Ma'anemer translation. You can read it in Afrikaans. Lo later. Right? Because the red is really down. You know I'm not sure. I don't want to debate this with you. I might be insulting your South African background here, but anyway, yeah, you could read Kriyas Ma'anemer in any language. But Rabbi Akiva Eiger points out that there's certain words that can't be translated, so therefore we have to transliterate them. Okay, fine. We're not learning Hilchos Kriyas Ma'anemer here, but he points out the following: that according to the Brisker Rav, in his understanding of the Rambam, what
the Keren Or is talking about the
leave out the Keren Or here because I don't want to get confused. Maybe you'll have a shtickle Torah here with the Keren Or, but I'm right now focused exclusively on the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav. No. I'm saying, let me tell you what the Brisker Rav says. The Brisker Rav is saying that from the fact that the Rambam has to tell you that the Shem Hashem is written kiksavo, it means that the purpose and the definition of Megillah Sotah is shvua. And therefore, we have a Havamina that since the shvua is read as adnus, therefore it should be written in the Megillah's adnus. If that be the case, then we have a problem here. Why? Because the Rambam writes that mashbiah kohen b'loshon shehi makeres, right? And basically, the shvua should explain to her that, look, you violated the kidui and you did stira, and therefore this is what you have to do. You got to drink for the memorarim. All that it has to be explained to her in her vernacular, in her spoken language. Now, wait a second. The kevan shemashbiah osa b'loshon shemakira hare she'ena ksiva b'diuk mashmashbiah. The ksiva, right? The ksiva undoubtedly has to be in Lashon Kodesh, less man to Poland. But the shvua, says the Rambam, is in her language. You cannot therefore say that the ksiva is a reflection of the shvua because there's a discrepancy between the ksiva and the shvua since you cannot translate the languages accurate. V'yesh lidchos. What's v'yesh lidchos? Now again, you're asking me who's talking now. I don't know. They don't give you a clue as to who is the Baal Hamarocha. I mean, maybe if you read through, the pages at the introduction, maybe you'll see. I don't think it's one person. I think it's a whole. Yeah, I don't know how many people they hire for this. Are you applying for a job? No, I'm just
I can hold a candle. Pulling stuff.
No, it's really very impressive. I mean. And I'm very excited about the fact that they don't leave out Brisker Torah. In fact, in Mirz Hashem, we're going to see here in where does he quote Moshe? Which number is that? Anyway,
I thought after the Talmud Talmudid, there's nothing that could be ever written there.
Oh yeah, here it is, number hey. What?
Yeah. I thought after the Talmud Talmudid, there's no more Torah that needs to.
I don't know. What can I tell you? Torah is endless. Right? And I don't say that it's a matter of faith. I say it's a matter of experience. Torah is just endless. Oh, I forgot his name.
What year?
Oh, no, 200 years. Yeah, no, the Keren Or is 200 years. The Keren Or might have been the forerunner or one of the forerunners of Reb Chaim Brisker. I mean, he's really, yeah. In any event, So that's that. Let me move on. How we doing on the clock? Not too great. Number Gimel. Okay. Now Rava says that a Megillah Sotah has to be written when? By day and not by night. Do you remember this? He derives this from Gzeira Shava, Torah, Mishpat to Zakein Mam. And the Rambam paskins that if a Megillah Sotah is written at night, it's psula. However, the Rambam doesn't derive it from the same Gzeira Shava that our Gemara Sugi of Rava derives it. Rava derives it from the word Torah, right? It says in the Parsha of Sotah, HaTorah Hazos, and it says in the Parsha of Zakein Mamre, Alpi HaTorah. But the Sifri has a different drasha, and the Rambam apparently prefers the drasha of the Sifri. And it says in the Parsha of Sotah, it says v'kosav es ha'olos ha'eleh, and then it says v'hishka es ha'isha es ha'mayim, and finally v'hikriv es minchasa. So the Sifri says the following, that there's an equation here between v'kosav es ha'olos and v'hikriv es minchasa. And a korban is only brought when? By day and not by night. And therefore, hashkas sotah has to be by day and not by night. And therefore, ksivas ha'olos ha'ela, the writing of a Megillah Sotah, likewise has to be by day. So the Achronim want to know, why is it necessary to have two drashas? You have the drasha of the Gzeira Shava Torah, and then you have the drasha of the Sifri, because the Hikris Minchasa follows the Kasa. And just like Hikrivis Minchasa, it has to be like all Korbanos by day, so to the Ksivas HaMegillah has to be by day. And here the Brisker Rav has a Chiddush. So this you'll turn to page Mem Dal. He says the following. The concept of mishpat, as derived from the Gzeira Shava to Zakein Mamre, Torah, that only applies to Hashkas HaSotah. Why? Because Hashkas HaSotah is Dinei Nefashos. And it has the status of mishpat. So just like in Zakein Mamre, the Torah says Torah, and it's referring to Dinei Nefashos, because the Zakein Mamre is actually put to death by Chenek. So too, in Hashkas Sotah, it also has the status of mishpat. However, that doesn't prove a thing about Ksivas Megillah Sotah. Ksivas Megillah Sotah cannot be classified and defined as mishpat. It's only a part of the long, drawn-out process which will culminate in Hashkah. So the Hashkah has to be BIyun as mishpat, but not the Ksiva. So therefore, we need another drasha of the hikriv, right? That the korban has to be by day, and therefore the ksiva has to be by day as well. The Brisker Rav says the following. He says, based on a Tosfos, that the halacha that Dinei Nefashos requires yom is not part of a general halacha of mishpat, but rather it's a separate halacha. We would say in Yiddish, a bezundra halacha in Dinei Nefashos. That Tosfos has a separate halacha. Again, we'd have to go through the Tosfos, but not now. Of Nefashos requires yom. However, the word mishpat does not refer specifically, exclusively to Dinei Nefashos. We know that mishpat includes a lot more than Dinei Nefashos. So therefore, if we have a Gzeira Shava between the mishpat of Zakein Mamre and the Parsha of Sotah, then mishpat should not be, as we said before, restricted to the Hashkas HaSotah, because that's Dinei Nefashos, but mishpat includes any Maisa HaSotah. And therefore, we're back...
Including the writing.
including the writing, because the writing is part of the Maisa Sotah. We have the writing, we have the Hashba, in which the Kohen is Mashpia, we have Hakabolas, and then we have the Karma. And after that, it culminates with what? With Ashkas HaSotah. Again, whether the writing is before the Karban or after the Karban, that's a different story. That's for next week. Now we have a problem. And the Keren Ora raises this problem. First of all, we don't understand why you need the two drashos and why the Rambam rejects our Gzeira Shava. According to the Brisker Rav, for example, we don't have an answer to that question because the word Mishpat is all-inclusive. The entire Maises Sotah is part of Mishpat, which would include even Ksivas HaMegillah. And secondly, why do we need a drasha to establish, just one second, Madua Sarach Lilmod Adin Shemashkas Sotah. Oh, right. So if the entire Maises Sotah requires Yom based on the halach of Mishpat, because Mishpat is all-inclusive, the Maises Sotah, then we're going to use that word Mishpat derived from Zakin Mamre to establish that Ashkas HaSotah is BIyun. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Because the Rambam paskins that first they do what's called Kiddush HaMincha B'Kli Shares, and then they have Hashka. Then it's impossible that Hashka would be Balayla. Why? Because we have a psul of Lina. Do you follow? You're Magdish, the Mincha, which is, right, Kemach Soles, right? Well, not in the case of Sotah, but anyway, Kemach. And you're Magdish it when? Before the Ashkas Sotah. If the Ashkas Sotah is at night and you Magdish the Sotah, then then the Mincha is possible midin li. Now, in number Dalid, he quotes the father of the Rambam. And honestly speaking, you guys are much more erudite scholars than I am. I don't remember any quotes from Maimon, the Rambam's father. And I'm a little disappointed because I wish that I had more quotes from Maimon, because I was always trained to believe that the Rambam's father was this great scholar. Maybe he wasn't the Rambam. Yeah? Anyway, this is going to be a total bomb. A total bomb. The Tashbates, who lived about 5.5, 6 centuries ago, quotes Maimon. So he's going back 3, 4 centuries earlier. And Maimon bases himself on a Gemara in Yoma. The Gemara in Yoma tells us about Heleni. Maimon is the Rambam's father.
Maybe there's 2 Maimons.
There may be 1,000 Maimons, but the Maimon that we're talking about now is the Rambam's father. And so the Tashbates quotes Maimon, who bases himself on a Gemara in Yoma. What does the Gemara in Yoma say? The Gemara tells us about Eleni Amalka. She made a takana kind of thing. What was her takana? That she established a tavla shel zav, and they wrote the parsha of Megillah Sotah on this tavla of zav, and they placed it high up so that the Kohanim would simply copy that tavla when it came around to the Sotah, and they had to write a Megillah Sotah. Now, the Gemara asks the following question in Masechta Yoma on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. How could she have done such a thing? Because the halacha is that also lichtov sefer Torah she'eno sholem. Again, in Rabbosai, if we're learning the halachas of Stam, this sugya would be a major sugya. You have to write more than just one parsha in the Torah. So how could she do such a thing? And the Gemara answers that she did it in like a nutrikon. In other words, she only wrote like the first letter of each word, and the Kohanim would understand how to read it, but it wasn't written the way a parsha in the Torah has to be written, because that would be prohibited. Says Maimon that when a Kohen writes Megillah Sotah, he's meant to copy it exactly as it's written in the Tavla. And the Tavla was written in Rashi Tevos. So basically, according to Maimon, a Megillah Sotah does not look like you and I think it looks. And the Tashbates brings 2 rayos to disprove the Maimon and prove that Megillah Sotah has to be written as it's written in the Torah. You can't just write abbreviated forms. How are we doing on the clock? Okay, I'm going to try to push this in. I just want to mention Rav Moshe Soloveitchik because I have, an emotional attachment. His first raya is that the Gemara says that if you write a Megillah Sotah without sirtut, right, those lines underneath each line, then it's possible. He says the following. According to the Gemara, Megillah Sotah has the same status as a Sefer Torah. And just like a Sefer Torah requires sirtut, we have Allah L'Moshe B'Sinai, Rashi says, we require sirtut in Megillah Sotah. According to you, Maimon, that all you need is to, some sort of abbreviated form in the Megillah, then why do you need sirtut? That din in sirtut is derived from the halach of Sefer. And secondly, says the Tashbeitz, the Mishnah Daf Chav says that if she denies that what's the case? Is she admitting or denying? That's okay.
Sotah, I refuse to drink.
Right, but what does that mean? She's admitting, confessing, or denying. Just give me a second. Sorry, you have to give me a second here because that's today's daf.
She's not necessarily admitting or denying.
Right, so she's not admitting.
She's not admitting and she's not denying.
No. Just one second. No, she's admitting.
We derive from.
No, because it says Eina Shosa. Eina Shosa.
Well,
give me a second. Let me. Yeah, I know. But right, but there are circumstantial evidence will prove why she doesn't want to drink. Just one second.
Not the holidays.
Just one second. I'm sorry. I apologize. I got a little sidetracked here. It always happens to me at the end of the shir. Imad Shelo Nimfika, right, is just one second. That's the problem with Masifti. You have to turn so many pages. Yeah. All right, I'm sorry, just because we don't have time, I'm going to leave that out for the time being. In any event, he says the following, that we have to get rid of this Megillah. We put him to Geniza because we're talking about a case where they wrote the Megillah Sotah and they were about to obliterate the name of Hashem by putting it into the Mayim, but she has rights to say Eini Shosa. So now you have a Megillah and it has the Shem Hashem, but it doesn't have a purpose. It's purposeless. Why? Because we can't be mashka her because she says Eini Shosa. And we're not allowed to read from it as well. Lefi Divrei Rabbeinu Maimon, that the Ksiva was just an abbreviated form, what he calls Beserigin, then you're allowed to be mochikin. Why do we require Geniza? And Isa Megillas Megillah Ksuva Rashi Tables. Okay, finally, if you can stick around for another 2 minutes, I was very impressed that the Otzer Hayunim quotes Rav Moshe Soloveitchik. He's being quoted by his brother, the Brisker Rav, and he's arguing against the Kiryas Sefer. The Kiryas Sefer was about...
Rav is quoting Rav Moshe Soloveitchik.
Correct, as he does very often, even in his published work. There's a whole piece in the Brisker Rav in Hilchos Paraduma, which is based on what he heard from his brother Rav Moshe. And the whole Stickle Torah, by the way, about Dalid Kosos, which in a different context, I spent here in Efrat months on the Stickle Torah, the Brisker Rav. Our Rebbe told us that the whole piece is really based on Rav Moshe together with the Brisker Rav. They worked on it together as a chavrusa. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. But the Kiryas Sefer has a certain interpretation of the Rambam Perek Gimel Hilchos Sotah, and Rav Moshe offers what he considers a better alternative to explain the Rambam. The Kiryas Sefer says that based on the pasuk v'kasav es ha'olos ha'eleh, which is the pasuk that we've been dealing with the last hour, is that we have to write the Megillah as it's written in the Torah. And therefore, in terms of the Shem Hashem, the name of God is written in the Torah as Yud Kei Vav Kei Shem HaMeforash. And that's why the Rama Paskins in Perek Gimel Hilchos Sotah that you have to write the Shem Havai and not Adnos. However, Moshe Soloveitchik says that no. That's not the source of the Rambam. The Rambam is not based on the pasuk because of it. There's no proof from that pasuk that you have to write the olos exactly as it's written in the Torah, and especially according to the Brisker Rav, who was of the opinion that the ksiva is really the nusach of the shvuah. So you can't prove anything from the pasuk because of it. But what is the source of the Rambam? Says Rav Moshe, tremendous bekiyas here, a sugya in Yuma Daf Samach Tes Amid Beis, and that's the sugya of Sefer Torah. And we derive a lot of halachas of Sefer Torah, Kriyas HaTorah from Ezra. When Ezra came and Aliyah, the Second Commonwealth, it says, "Vayivarech Ezra Hashem Elokim Hagadol." What does it mean, Hagadol? Says Rav Yosef, in the name of Rav, in the Gemara in Yoma, that Gadol means Shegidlo b'Shem Hamaforosh. That Ezra took the opportunity to be Magadel Hashem with the Shem Hamaforosh. Now, says Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, take a look at a Gemara earlier in Masechta Sotah on Daf Zayin. The Mishnah says that they would warn the Sotah by saying, you know what, back down, confess your guilt, and we will not have to obliterate what? Asi lishmoa gadol, shenichtav bikdusha, on the Megillah, shelo yimach alamayim. When they tried to convince and influence and bear upon the Sotah that she should back off, they told her that if you don't back off, we're going to obliterate what? The Shmo HaGadol. Now, what does Shmo HaGadol mean? The Shmo HaGadol means, as we saw of Yosef in Masechta Yoma, it means the Shem HaMefarah. So Shmo HaGadol equals Shem HaMefarah. That we know from the Gemara in Yoma. Comes along Rav Moshe and he says, look at the Mishnah at the beginning of Sotah and of Zion. The Mishnah says that when they warned her because if she doesn't back off, they're going to obliterate the Shem HaGadol. What is the Shem HaGadol? By definition, the equation is Shem HaGadol equals Shmo HaMefurash. And that's what they're going to be obliterating if she doesn't back down and they force her to drink and they take the Shmo HaGadol that's written in the Megillah and they put it into the Mayim, and they obliterate the Shem HaGadol, which is the Shem HaMefarash. Hence, the Rambam proves that Megillah Sotah has to be written with the Shem HaMefarash.
Not Rashi Tevos.
Certainly not Rashi Tevos, but the Chiddush is not even Adnus, which is the Kriya of the Shvuah. So I'm happy to say that we covered 90% of what I prepared for today, which is very rare for me, and that we finished with a shtickle Torah from Rav Moshe. So here in Efrat, I don't know if they did anything special on Gimel Shvat, is the yahrzeit of Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, but okay, how many months ago was Gimel Shvat? Adar, Nisan, about...
it's not the building.
Yeah, I don't know when the yahrzeit is available. I don't know. I observed the yahrzeit of Rav Moshe, but yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it's there. It's not a secret. You know what? I think I do know the yahrzeit of the Brisker. Just give me a minute to remember it. But anyway. But this is such a beautiful shtickle Torah of Moshe. He takes a Gemara in Yoma, puts it together with the Gemara in Sotah, mixes it together, and it comes out that you have to write the Shem HaMefarash in the Megillah Sotah. One thing I could say, I have yahrzeit coming up for my father. Now, one thing Rav Moshe did right, not that he needs me for approval, is that he married off my parents. Because Baruch Hashem, they were married for
what year?
55 years.
What year? What year they married?
I should know that by heart, but I don't. I'm not good at dates, You know the story, they say that Rav had some sort of an incident on a plane coming from Boston to New York. So they were mazik the doctor, Dr. Alan Goldstein. So Goldstein wanted to see if the Rav's mind was working. He asked him, what's the date? So the Rav said, you don't ask a brisker a date, you ask him a shver Rama. So he asked me a date exactly when my parents were married. I could figure that out, but I don't know. And the interesting thing is that at my father's wedding, in those days, the chassan had to say a shtickle Torah. It was serious business, not like today, where, before he finishes the first sentence, they're already singing Odi Shama. And my father said a shtickle Torah on Safek Tum V'Shus Rabim, Safek Tar, and Safek Tum V'Shus Yachadim. And in the middle of his presentation, Rabbi Moshe was on his right, and towards the end, it was Chaim Zimmerman, who's my father's good buddy from childhood. So Chaim starts yelling, "Nein, it's not this, and it's not that." And he starts slugging up my father. And Rabbi Moshe started saying the Tatat Gelur Nitazai, and Reb Chaim was not like that. And my father had such a headache. Finally, Reb Moshe saw that my father was turning white. He says, "Lozim Endikin, let him finish the shtickle Torah," and immediately they brought him to the chuppah. There was another surprise that my father didn't realize that was waiting for him under the chuppah, is that some smart aleck took out the glass and instead he put in a schnapps glass. And my father was trying to break this glass and he almost broke his foot. And my father immediately said, "Where is Bezdin?" I don't know if you know Moshe Bezdin, all of a sudden, but my father immediately guessed who was the whippersnapper who put that glass in. Anyway, all right, Rabbi.
What do you know of Moshe from?
Rabbi Moshe was my father's Rebbe. My father was